The sound of Diego's motorcycle at the gate made Slade hurry out of bed. He could not believe he had overslept. Slade had spent the night there alone. He knew Diego had some additional evidence he wanted Slade to see. Slade was making coffee when Diego walked in with bags of food. They didn't bother with formalities. Handshakes or telling each other good morning was a waste of energy and time. With their plates filled, they sat at the counter. Slade had 4 bar stools along the side. It's where he ate when he was home. Diego was troubled to the extent he hunched over his plate, his mood dark. Slade felt his appetite vanish. Diego could eat if he was on fire, but Slade couldn't when all signs coming from Diego were bad. "Let me see what you have," Slade said as he put down his fork. Diego handed him the file. Slade opened it. There were pictures of Cole and Hank checking out vans. They had been photographed in South Phoenix as well as Surprise. There were pictures of them at the house in North Phoenix after they had purchased the van. They never suspected they were being followed? Slade hissed in disbelief. Diego couldn't talk. His mouth was full, so he shook his head no. "Unfreaking believable," Slade whispered. He put the first few pictures to the side. The next set was of Cole with Elaine, Jesse's manager. They were walking into one of the bars the gang owned in Phoenix, not far off of Interstate 17. Elaine looked nervous. She was dressed in her usual blue jeans with a t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in its customary ponytail. She was easily recognizable. Slade paused. What was wrong with this picture? He thought. He couldn't put his finger on it at the moment. He knew something was off. His frown caught Diego's attention. The younger man paused the next bite halfway to his mouth. Slade put the picture between them. "Tell me what's wrong with this picture." Diego chewed the bite as he studied it. He was about to tell Slade he didn't know when he put the fork down. It was the dark-haired woman in the background. She faced the camera. She was dressed to the nines. She was out of place in the dark, dingy biker bar. Congresswoman Susan Williams. It was an arranged meeting. Cole was bringing Elaine to meet Congresswoman Williams. But why? "Sure wish we could have got audio." This was last night? Diego nodded, cutting the next bite with a vengeance. The next pictures were of the 3 talking with drinks. Susan had a martini. Cole stuck with his usual whiskey, while Elaine was drinking a soft drink. It could be a rum and coke. Slade didn't know. Slade picked up his fork to resume eating. Diego had his plate cleaned. Since Slade was eating, he got up and refilled their coffee cups. Diego motioned Slade to keep looking as he sat down. Slade was barely halfway through the pictures. Cole and Susan left together, their arms around each other with smiles on their faces. Elaine was nowhere to be seen. Was it possible she had slipped out? Then the bite Slade had managed to swallow seemed to get stuck. Whoever took the pictures stepped outside the back door. They panned around the lit areas, then stepped over to the dumpster. The camera seemed to freeze. Elaine lay there. Her eyes were open, but she didn't see anything. A bullet hole in the center of her forehead ended her life. Her handbag that slung from her shoulder when she walked into the bar was still around her shoulder. Diego didn't look at him or the picture. Slade decided to look at the rest of the pictures before he said anything. He saw people he knew from the gang, but the one person he didn't see was Hank. That was until he got to the last picture. He saw him headed out with Bonnie. He pointed to a slim woman with short blonde hair. She looked vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place her. Know her? Diego checked the young woman out. He shook his head no. Diana's in New York, Slade said as Diego slid his sunglasses on. I've asked Hank and Cole to drive up to Wickenburg this afternoon to help us wire the shed for security. They are going to be there around 1. It's time to deal with them. Diego scooped up the pictures. He put them in the envelope he had brought them in. They'd go back into his saddlebag. The 2 men left the house. They headed down the 10 miles to Interstate 17. The blonde was nagging at him so bad he pulled off. Diego stopped behind him. Pictures. Slade growled. Diego got them out. Slade stood there and went through them a lot slower, studying every face. The blonde was in half of them as she stayed on the outskirts. Who is this? Diego shook his head. He didn't have an answer as he watched traffic whiz around them. They got back on their bikes. When it was safe, they merged back onto the highway. It nagged Slade the entire way to Wickenburg. He knew her. He just couldn't put his finger on who she was, and it drove him crazy. Diego and Slade got to their property. The supplies had been delivered the day before. They slid the 2 doors back so the warm sunshine could chase the chill from the shed. They got busy opening up boxes and bags, setting out their supplies and tools without speaking. Security was Diego's expertise. He had a security business that was making him money, hand over fist. A quarter of a mile to the west, on the other side of the road, was a brand new, double-wide mobile home. The blonde that occupied Slade's mind sat in a sunny room with 4 monitors that hung from the ceiling. She had just fixed a cup of hot tea to go with her sandwich. She watched via a hidden camera as the 2 men worked. There was audio with video. She would be able to hear everything they said. Diego and Diana weren't lovers. She would never cheat on Slade, but they were as close as 2 friends could be. Diego had treated her as a little sister, though she was older than he was. He had made trips to New York just to see how she was doing. She had taken courses in security so she could work with him someday. When Diego knew Slade was ready to pull the plug on those 2 men, he asked her to fake the trip to New York. While he didn't care to go behind Slade's back, he wanted the assurance that she was nearby. She had spent the morning at his target range practicing. This afternoon, she'd be monitoring the situation. If she was needed, she'd be there. Slade would not be happy, but Diego already knew how he could convince Slade it was necessary. Hank had killed Elaine the evening before. It would be easier for him to pull a gun on Slade and Diego. If that happened, Diego was pretty sure he could level Hank, but Diego would need proof it was in self-defense. Diana would remain hidden. Hopefully she wouldn't have to come rescue them, but if she did, Slade would be grateful. If she didn't, she'd get on her motorcycle, go into Wickenburg, then take Highway 60 all the way back to Phoenix, just so she didn't have to drive a quarter mile where Slade might recognize her. Diego knew what he was doing. He knew that if they were lucky, Slade would never be the wiser. That'd be the best for all of them. Both Slade and Diego tensed as the 2 motorcycles approached the shed. Diana stiffened, her hot tea forgotten. She refused to take her eyes off the screen as Hank and Cole got off their bikes. and walked forward.